Ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
What are we doing today? Wow, bread, flour. Whoa.
We're making sourdough.
Okay.
This is my sourdough recipe. It is the combination of a very complicated recipe made by Claire Saffitz and Brad Leone, and a very simple recipe by that guy that Paul Hollywood went to and made a 24-hour bread. So it's somewhere in between, and it's the laziest, best sourdough combination I've made so far. And so we are going to bake this on Sunday morning. Today is Friday, 8 p.m. And so today, all we need to do is get the starter fed so that it's ready tomorrow night to mix in with the dough. So we'll make the dough and mix it with the starter tomorrow night. But today, we're just feeding the starter. So I keep my starter in a jar in the fridge. And unless I am really using a lot multiple days in a row, I just put it back in the fridge. And I take it out. It's been sitting out for about an hour already, and it's got a little bubble to it. I did use it just the other day, and so it's pretty healthy right now. It's pretty active right now. You can see there's still bubbles in there. And we're just going to take out a little bit to make one bread. Okay. So whenever I feed my starter, I put it in a separate bowl. And then whatever I'm not using, I just leave in the jar, and I give a little extra flour and a little extra water. So I will feed my starter now. And when I feed it, I just use the regular bread flour. We'll add whole wheat flour to the bread, but for the starter, I just use bread flour. And I'll use a 1/4 cup of flour and a 1/4 cup of water. And that's all we have to do today. Feed this baby. I just mix it until it's incorporated. It'll do the rest on its own. And then cover it, and I leave this out at room temperature. And I will come back to keep feeding this every few hours. So I probably won't remember to feed it late tonight. So I'll just feed it first thing in the morning tomorrow. And then probably again in the afternoon. So I'll do 3 feeds just like this before we make bread. So that's it. See you in the morning. Okay, so it is now Saturday, almost 11 a.m. I should have done this earlier, but it's okay. This is what the starter looks like when it's ready to be fed. It's got this foam on the top, and if you move it around, there's lots of bubbles. This one could use more feeding, but this is pretty good, meaning it's ready to be fed again. It's kind of what it looks like. So we're just going to give it the same, another 1/4 cup of bread flour and 1/4 cup of water. And I do use filtered water because our water is very hard and I just don't know what's in it. So we're going to feed it again now and maybe feed it again later, but we'll see how it's looking. Because it's so late, I probably won't feed it twice. So that's the next step for now. So let's add in flour and water. Mix it up, put the lid back on. Just try to make sure there's no big clumpies and it's incorporated. Eat it up. Starter. And it's pretty warm in here. It's about 70 degrees inside. Okay, good to go. See you later. Hello. Okay, so once your starter is ready, which this one is, super foamy to the point where it's getting liquidy, which is actually maybe too far, but it's okay. It's fine. Then you can start the next phase, which is actually making the dough. So the starter is just the rising agent. This is going to be the actual dough. So I use 2 flours for my dough. I use bread flour, which is high protein, and we like this brand. It's somewhat local, Dakota made, and it's good. So I do 80% bread flour and 20% whole wheat flour. So I'm gonna do, if you do 1,000 grams total, that makes 2 breads. 2 breads. So if you wanted to make just one, you could do 400 grams and 100 grams, or 800 and 200. So I'm going to mix those in a bowl now, and I measure in grams on this little kitchen scale. Since I overfed my starter and forgot that we were going to make bread last night, it's now morning, and so I'm going to make 2 because I have lots of starter to use up. Okay. Close enough. I don't get exact. Nice whole wheat. Just a touch more. Beautiful. Okay. If you want to add in rosemary, this is a good time to do it when it's all dry. We've done that, and I just eyeball it. I do a bunch of handfuls until it looks like there's going to be a little rosemary in every bite. I just stirred the flowers together. This is sort of optional. And then I make a well in the center for the water to go in. When I have followed sourdough recipes, there is almost always way too much or way too little water. And this is one of those things that you kind of have to just eyeball until it looks right, depending on the flour you're using and the way you measure. I think measuring in grams is helpful, but other ones I've used have been way too wet. And so when I do 1,000 grams of flour, I do 800 grams of water. And that has been good for me. So that's what I'm going to do. Just pour all of it right in. Almost there. Oops. A little over is okay. If I go way over, this is why I make the little well. Just scoop a little bit out. Dump that. And then I love using this spoon to mix this together because it doesn't require a lot and the back of it looks like a drumstick. I just honestly use this straight in the middle and I just start making circles to slowly incorporate the flour into the water. And I just mix it until it's all evenly wet. I don't knead it. I don't do anything special. I just mix it until everything is combined evenly. And then we let this sit on its own for somewhere between 30 minutes to 2 hours. It's pretty warm in here, so it'll be going quickly, I assume. And you just want it to get stretchy a little bit. So just once you start pulling on the dough, if it stretches, then it's ready to go. So if that takes 30 minutes and you check on it and it's stretchy, you can move on to the next step, which will be adding the starter and adding the salt. So I just make sure there's no like major dry bits on the bottom. Like you can see there's a little bit of flour still on the bottom. I try to squish all that in, but it's okay if it's shaggy. It's gonna all blend together in a minute. So I pretty much just leave it at this and cover it and let it sit in this same bowl. Try to get any dough off of your dough hook, back of your spoon, whatever you're using. So right now, if you pull it, it's not stretchy at all, right? It's just globby. We'll see when it looks stretchy when we come back. So we'll come back 30 minutes to 2 hours and check on it. Okay, so it's been an hour or so, and our dough is stretchy. So here it is. It hasn't been too long, but you can tell when I pick it up now, look how far I can pull it, and in between my fingers, it starts to stretch and get thinner and thinner as you're pulling it. Now you can technically make this go further. There's all these ways people talk about measuring it, like making a window pane, which is doing pretty good. It's ripping a little bit, but this is close enough. It's fine. So what we have to do next is we're gonna add the starter, which is all ripe and ready. And actually it's a little too ripe, but it's okay. And some salt, but then we're gonna pour this all into a oiled bowl. And so I'm gonna do that first before I get my hands dirty. And then it'll sit in this bowl for quite a while, fermenting and getting ready to be used. So I just grease up all the sides because it's going to rise a lot in this bowl and probably overflow because it's a big one and it's nice and warm today, but that's okay. You can also put it in here and then this can sit overnight, which is what I normally do. I just forgot. But that's okay. Okay, so we're using our scale again. So we will zero it out with the dough on here. And then we're gonna add 250 grams of starter and 20 grams of salt. And this is what I use. There's probably better salts to use, but this works fine. So here we go, adding the starter. This one is pretty liquidy. Ideally it would not be, but it's okay. Mix it up a little and spoon it so I can be a little more precise. If anything, I would add more starter than less. Okay, there we go. And then 20 grams of salt. There we go. And then we just have to incorporate it and stick it in the bowl. And so one of the methods I've seen to use is to like pinch it in, like this, or you poke holes in the dough first and then pour it on. So I kind of did the same thing. I sort of pinch it just to get it started, but then I usually get impatient and I just start pulling at it. Whatever you can do to mix it in. The thing that's tricky is what I've made mistakes on, at least in the past, or what made it difficult, is that if my dough wasn't wet enough, then this was really hard to incorporate. And so I had to add more water at this stage in order to incorporate the sourdough starter. And then it got really wet and I'd have to add more flour to make it the right consistency. And then it's not as stretchy because I added flour late in the game. And so the trick is to get the moisture right on the dough before you're at this stage, which is why I use my 800 grams of water, approximately. Then I just start doing this to incorporate it a little bit better. But the great thing is you don't have to mix it super well, because now as it's resting, if you let it sit overnight too, then that's fine. And you'll just come check on it in the morning, or maybe one last time before you go to bed or something. But since it's daytime now, I can come back and every hour or so, I'm going to take a look at it and I'm going to stretch it like this, which right now it does nothing. It's just a big blob. It's not stretchy at all. You'll see how flexible it becomes in a minute. So that's probably all I need to do. And I just take this bad boy, plop it in my oiled bowl, and cover it. And we'll come back and check on it every so often and stretch it out. There you go. Have a nice nap, Brady. Okay, so it's been a little while, an hour and a half or so, and it is time to fold the dough. So it will be a lot more relaxed now, and I just come at it and I kind of tuck under and I lift it up. You'll see it's much stretchier now. And then I just kind of fold it back down on top of itself, and then I turn it and I do it again. And the second fold, it's a lot less stretchy, and the third fold will barely stretch, like this. Now it's just staying in a lump. And so we'll just leave it like this for another few hours, come back later. Sometimes I barely do this step and it sits overnight, and it's always been fine. But if you're around, it's nice to let out the bubbles so it can keep going. Keep going, bread. And we'll just keep doing this. Usually I let it sit overnight for 8 hours or so. So I started this in the morning. So for a few hours today, it'll be fine. It's been many hours since we last folded this, and it is ready. You can see through the bowl that it is fully expanded, and it's nice and bubbly, and it's stuck on the bottom of this cutting board now. So
Oh my God.
lift it up, and here she is. She is jiggly and bubbly and ready to go. So I'm going to kind of punch it down and then separate it into two, and I'll get the first one ready and resting, and then we'll put it in the oven. So here it is. Lots of bubbles, which is great. It's very stretchy at this point. And we want to get some of the bubbles out because there's a lot of gas built up in here because it's been sitting for a long time in a hot kitchen. But not too much. Okay, so I'm just gonna eyeball it and split it in half, roughly. And then I take this last bit and I put it down on flour and I shape it. So to shape it, I fold each edge over kind of like a square. Each little corner. This is gonna be a good one. I can feel it. Sometimes I do more because it didn't quite all make it and there's a lot of wetness. And then flop it over onto some more flour. I'm gonna get more flour actually. It's very sticky. And then I just kind of do this and then let it sit for like 10 minutes like this before we put it in the oven. So meanwhile, I've had my cast iron Dutch oven preheating at 450. And we're gonna put this, we're gonna score it, put it on parchment, and then put it in the oven in 10 minutes. Okay, so we're just gonna score this, and I just use this knife because it works, but there are better ones. Use your sharpest knife. This helps the gas escape while it is baking, so it doesn't get stuck. And I just put it on a little piece of parchment. So I will do like this. Ooh, she's sticky. And then don't burn yourself because your thing is hot. Drop her in. And then I put a lid on. It'll bake for 15 minutes with the lid on, and then 30 minutes with the lid off. And then she's done. Good luck, buddy. Okay. Okay, it's done. We took the lid off after 15 minutes, and this doesn't fit. I'll use my little one. So it'll be crispy and hard on the outside. The outside gets a little bit darker, but that doesn't mean it's burnt. It's just ready. And then transfer to a cooling rack so the bottom doesn't get soggy. The bottom should also sound hollow. And we got to get that little paper off. So let me get a mitt. Take off the little paper. Sometimes it gets a little folded. It should sound kind of hollow when you tap on it. Yeah, that. And it's nice and crispy and hot. Okay.